store by a breezeway over the parking area. So that's all the that's all we could go off as far as, you know, what it looked like historically. It looks like it was essentially a storage, built as a storage facility for the front building. It also, I think, housed the former furnace for the front building. I'll kind of take you through, you know, some pictures, give us an idea. This is what Scott purchased Weber's Cleaners building. Like I said, I think he's done a great job at the building now. Replaced all this glass here, painted, did repairs to the original finish, new paint. He had some windows on the side that he's fixed, cleaned those up, completely remodeled the inside, moved his business there. If you have an opportunity to go by, it's night and day difference in my opinion. Done a great job. You know, as far as, you know, for staff, Scott has, you know, come through and really done everything by the book to this building that he could. Every process along the way, as you can see on page 2 of this staff report, multiple change of uses, building permit, HLC approval, conditional use permit, sign permit. A lot of things have been done to this building. So, as mentioned, we are here though to talk about the back building. The back building, if you had an opportunity to go by, I actually went by there today. It's in worse, it's in disrepair, far worse than the front building was. Well, one thing that actually Scott is probably going to chat with you today about, he may be coming back to HLC to discuss something else about the building. He had an engineer, I believe it was an engineer, come by and take a look. There's 2 rather large cracks that are starting to form. Well, they have been growing possibly on the building. The back would be the eastern corner of the back building is actually sinking, and it's disconnecting from the main building itself. So, I mentioned this is the building's in quite disrepair. Throughout the years, multiple facade improvements have happened along the way. Additions, no real compatibility to the front building by any means, and you know, different varying levels of shotcrete or, you know, sprayed concrete, gunite have been applied. Multiple CMU fills just to fill up former openings. All the windows have been either busted out or boarded up. And Scott is proposing for this, you know, to go with not to go back to the shotcrete, but actually he's proposing, as mentioned, a hardy plank finish on it, a shiplap type of finish. Granted that the front building does not have that on it, but his argument is it's actually a product, or, you know, siding is a product in quite a few of the buildings, actually within a 300-foot radius of the building itself. He's also asking for approval of vinyl windows. Granted, our historic guidelines recommend wood windows, but he would like to stay consistent with what was approved in April for vinyl windows. And I think I'll just kind of take you through some of these pictures here so we can get an idea of the condition that it's currently in. This is the breezeway. It connects to the main building here. This is one of the cracks that I was just talking about. That crack as well as a crack right here. Essentially, this wall, the part that sticks up a little bit higher on each side, excuse me, right here, these, the engineers pretty much said that was the addition to what was originally there. You actually go inside that room and you can see an old steel window that has been completely enclosed. So that was probably the original window that was installed. And this is the inside, actually looking at it. It's probably 3 to 4 inches of a crack, clearly coming off. You stand in the middle of the floor and you can see it's really diving down. Granted, we're not here to talk about that today, but as mentioned, Scott may touch on that. You know, he may come back for some options in the future on how to deal with this. So these are proposed, renderings here. Granted, he's going to stay consistent with what was approved on the front building for the colors, and I'll show you a color palette of those in a couple slides here. So this is just to give us an idea of what the shiplap would look like and the two-tone finish on it. These are doorways. This would be the breezeway area, looking into the west side. This is on the alleyway here, so kind of gives us an idea of what the shiplap siding would look like. And following in with this color scheme here. As mentioned, there was the question of wood siding. Wood siding in the front is another material. Staff performed some inventory, walking around as well as Google Maps, and pretty much these green buildings here, Scott's buildings right here. The pink buildings are those buildings that don't have any siding whatsoever on them. Some of these gray, these are parking lots, of course, no siding there. Green are buildings though within a pretty close vicinity here that actually have wood siding. So I think I kind of breezed through this, and I'm more than happy to touch on anything with this application. Any questions?
I'd be curious about that part of the building that's going down.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to put new siding on it, I'm surprised that, and I don't know what it would cost, but to fix that before you put siding on the side of it.
Yeah, like I said, he'd probably touch on it more, but it's that area. The engineer said about $50,000 to jack up the corner of the building. It would then kind of move it back up and bring it back to close the crack. So I think he may share with you with some alternatives that he had. But yeah, this is all. I think as he got into it, to looking more and more about the possibility of putting siding on it, looking into more detail of the building. I think that is why putting the two cracks together. He reached out. So I think this is a pretty new development for him as far as this application was already submitted. We'd already been working on it. So this was as of today at 10 o'clock this morning is when I met Scott over there to talk about it. So.
The doorway entrance there, if you got that picture again, I don't see one in my hair. We're having a recess type.
It will be recessed, yeah. Not completely shown on this picture here, but yeah. And I had to check with Scott too. The computer program here, essentially, this is flat ground here. The computer program is actually going to show you the foundation to kind of give you an idea for that. So that was my first thought. I thought this was a window, but it's actually a doorway. So this is the one that goes out onto the alleyway. So the plan is to recess that in just a little bit. So.
And the other doorway on the other side is not, well, that shows it's recessed also, the one that's on the very corner of the building.
Yeah, right here. And
where are you? I lost your pointer.
Oh yeah, that's right here.
Okay.
Yeah, this is that the one that goes into the breezeway. Yeah, it looks directly at the other building, the back side of it.
So then that doorway that's on the alley side that is on the left-hand corner, is that going to be changed to a window then?
Oh no, this will be.
Breezeway.
It'll be two separate doors.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll have the two doors. But this one, yeah, I guess both will be recessed in slightly.
And sorry, can I speak? Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask for proponent testimony.
Okay.
Come back to staff later.
Sure.
You'll have to come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Scott Austin, Richardson Gap Road in Scioto, Oregon. As you guys probably know, the front building, if you guys haven't been down there, we welcome you to come look and see what we've done inside. It's been quite a process. It took us about 5 months to get it there, and I think we did a great job on it, what we started with. But as far as the back building goes, the recessed doorways, so we were already talking about that. One of the reasons we wanted to recess was on the alleyway, and we didn't want the door right with the alley. That alleyway is pretty heavily used as far as vehicles go, and so the recessed doorways were so you could at least open the door and look both ways before you stepped out in front of traffic. So that was one of the reasons for the doorways. Where the breezeway is there's actually 2 doors there, and this door right here would go away. It's all boarded up inside, it doesn't function. That door would actually go away. Like Josh was saying, the steel windows, they're in very poor shape. To try and bring those back I don't even know that you could. I think if you were to try and prep those sandblasts, there wouldn't be much metal left to do much with them. But as far as the building goes, the look of it would basically match in colors, and as far as the 2 tones going around as the front building does. And so the building here where it stands alone, you guys have probably been out there, but there's a wall that kind of separates the old hospital property. So you get the front building, and then there's a CMU wall that goes and connects to the back building, and it just creates a barrier between. So what we were hoping to do in that separation wall, it also has big steel windows in it. And we were hoping to be able to salvage enough windows to leave those in place, find enough of the chicken wire glass from all the other windows, because some of them are busted out, and to be able to leave those steel windows in place and restore those to the best possible. But as far as the back building goes, we were hoping to be able to use the vinyl windows as we used in the back of the front building. When we talk about the cracks, we had a couple engineers come out, and like Josh had said, the northeast corner has settled quite a bit and created some pretty big concerns there. And what they would have to do to bring it back was they would have to basically tear up the floor, possibly some of the asphalt outside, drill in micro piles or earth anchors, and try and jack that whole thing back up, which also creates stresses. And so what we may be coming back with, in all honesty, Josh, can you go back to the one rendering where it just shows the top? No, the other corner, if you could, please. Yep. So what we're proposing is right here, about right here is the crack, and then the other one's right here, and it's just this corner. And so what we may be proposing, we're looking at our options, is maybe taking off those 2 sides of the building. Just so it would just be that corner right there. And right back in here, Josh went in with me today, right back in here on this wall along here, there's actually a steel window that's inside the building right here that was an exterior window at one time. But this here just has a big sliding door on it now. It's an old sliding door that had been retrofitted a number of times, because it actually, if you look in there, the opening was actually 3 times that size at one time, and they've reduced it down by adding CMU blocks and whatnot. So that may be an option. We're still weighing through things, but it could be very likely that we come back and ask you guys for permission to possibly do that. The cost to fix it's around $50,000, and we think we can take off those 2 sides of the building in that corner right there for about 10 to 15. So and of course, just like anything, the more you save, the more you put back into the building. But anyways, we would appreciate your consideration on what we're proposing on the siding and the windows. Actually, the siding, if you've been down in that alleyway and you kind of stand right there in the middle of the corner and you look around, like Josh was saying, there's everything from metal siding, just metal siding to brick to stucco to shiplap. There's just a combination of so many things in that area, right, you know, just right in that real close area. And we really feel with the shiplap, or with the hardy plank siding, like Jeff said, we would do a 4-inch reveal, and we would do a smooth siding, so it doesn't have any texture. It's just a smooth based hardy plank siding, so it looks like shiplap basically from a distance. If you're standing right at it, of course, there's going to be some differences in it, but the 4-inch reveal on it and just a smooth finish on it, no textured finish whatsoever. I think we'll give it a nice look, and I think it'll blend in really good with what the back of the hospital, the old hospital, is there.
So, why did you choose to do the hardy plank siding as opposed to just fixing the stucco?
Well, the stucco, as Josh had mentioned, it wouldn't be a matter of fixing the stucco, it would be a matter of replacing the whole finish on the stucco, because it goes from a very, very coarse, like a shotcrete finish, and then there's places where it's more like a fine stucco, as the front building is, but the finishes as you go around the building vary so greatly. It's not a matter of just prepping what's there and repainting. I don't think at the end of the day it would be very satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. But that's kind of one of the reasons that we knew we probably had to do something as far as siding. Again, you know, I know that we always mention cost, but there's a lot of costs that are involved when you get to these de-stressed historical buildings, and it takes a lot of time, money, and effort, and special people that want to put their money into restoring these things, and so that's sometimes when we come to you guys looking for help, because we're trying to stay within a certain budget ourselves to make it reasonable for the renovation.
Cost-wise, was the hardy plank more or less about the same as trying to resurface and make the stucco the same?
Far less.
Far less.
We calculated in all honesty, material wise, with our discounts, is we'll have almost about $4,000 into, you know, not counting my labor, just materials alone to put the outside hardy plank on. So it's substantially less than stucco. And in all honesty, I never priced out what the stucco is, but I assumed it would be more than $4,000.
Would the breezeway be kept?
The breezeway would be kept. We're going to re-roof it at the same time as we do this. It's been had its challenges as well, and we did a few patches to try and get us through this winter. You know, waiting for us to do the remainder of the work on the back of the building, and so yeah, that'll also be re-roofed and kept up.
So which of the original steel windows were you thinking about retaining?
I don't know if Josh shows them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not get them in. They would be about right here.
And they're about the same size. And I think there's one that sits up higher and two of them that sit down a little bit lower.
And they're in past the breezeway in that part of the.
Yep, back in the parking lot. So originally the front building was built in 1937, and we actually have the original blueprints when the back building was constructed. It was in the early mid-40s. Can't remember the exact date, but and then there was a couple additions that were added onto it. But originally, this back building was where they had the furnace and the steamer, and in the middle of the parking lot there was an old house. There used to be an old house sitting there, and when you go inside both buildings, when we were doing the renovation on the front one, there's stairs on the cement or the brick wall. So, and in talking to Bonnie Horrell, who her father owned the business in the late 40s, early 50s, there was a house, and so they did the cleaning in the back, It went up the stairs into the house that sat there. They did some finished work there, down the stairs into the front with some other finished work and displayed in the front of the building. So it's got some pretty cool history. It's pretty neat, and just to be a little bit off topic, in one of our big front windows is we're trying to gather as many artifacts and some different things from Bonnie and a few other people, some pictures, and we're also going to put a description of the building and actually Ward Weber, who built it, and what his history was for people to read and look at, and just kind of honor those people along with the building.
So what about the windows that face the Civic Auditorium? There's like the.
Oh, on
Yeah.
that one window.
Yeah, that one actually seems to be in, pretty good shape. At least I noticed that the ones kind of inside the breezeway, especially the ones on the north-facing ones, that lower sill is pretty rotten, pretty rusted. But the ones that, this one, which is an east-facing window, seem pretty intact except for the glaze. Is that window going to be retained?
In all honesty, I was hoping to replace them all with the vinyl to keep them consistent, and also, of course, energy values, it helps that, and I know that's not always a concern with the historical, but that's what we're proposing, is to change them all out.
Did you price out wooden windows?
Oh, yeah, have you?
Not much, no.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, they're pretty expensive, but yeah, in comparison.
When you're speaking of the breezeway, when you're standing in front of the building and you go down the alley, is that opening that's kind of a pocket in there?
Mhm.
That's the breezeway?
Yeah.
Okay, would that have hardy plank in it also?
No, we would go right to just this building, so the front building's here, and then there's that concrete wall that goes all the way across that creates that separation. So that would be right here. This concrete wall goes right here, and the front building sits here, and then the hospital's on the other side. So it would be hardy plank from this corner all the way.
So you
And
would-
then over around onto the side of the.
So actually, the south wall of the breezeway would not be hardy plank. That would be the wall that is in common between you and the hospital. That's the one where you were talking about salvaging windows.
That's correct.
Replacing them. You
That's
wasn't gonna
correct.
hardy plank that
No,
area.
no, this finish here is actually consistent enough where I could do repairs on it and maintain that.
Okay, so that's the windows you're planning on, hoping to find enough salvageable parts to repair.
Yeah, throughout all the rest of the windows that are in the building, yes.
So the alcove or breezeway, there's 3 sides on it, right? And would that be painted then to match the rest? Or?
Yep, the whole building, yeah.
Cause it seemed like when I looked at it, it's been a little while, and I talked to you that day, but it seemed like it was kind of beat up in there too.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm,
you're
yeah.
not hardy planking that because of the cost of it, or?
Well, I just figured that actually that back wall, because, we're gonna come around the rest of the back side of the building and be consistent with the colors, and then along that wall, colors will be consistent all the way around the whole thing, even with the hardy plank. But that texture on that, separation wall, if you will, is, like I said, consistent enough where I think I can do repairs on it and maintain that. I could hardy plank it just as easy, but then you start getting into window reveals and all kinds of different stuff when you start furring it out, so it changes things, as far as those steel windows. So if I can, I'd like to leave that just the finish that it is. And
Anybody have any more questions of the proponent?
I certainly would compliment you on the front, it really looks good.
good, have you guys, whoever
The rest
has.
of the building is the same color combination and cleaned up, it'll look a lot better than it does now, that's for sure.
yeah, we tried to blend everything kind of in with the surrounding buildings, and we're pretty pleased with it. And if you guys haven't been down there, we welcome you to come down and have a cup of coffee or look around, see what we've done inside as well. Yeah, it's amazing. It's a different building. I actually have to go back and look at pictures, because you know, it's hard to imagine what it was and then what it turned out to be. It's pretty neat.
I am a little bit concerned about re-siding this building, or giving permission even to re-side it while you're still in a quandary of what's gonna fall off or what's gonna have to be changed on there to make the building stable. The first thought that goes through my mind when you were talking about the area that is sinking might have something to do with removal of the tank that was in the alley at the time you was buying it, I believe, or maybe just prior to you buying it.
And Bob, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, and it could be, but I think that tank was much, from what I understood, is it was much further this way towards the street, because I believe it was the old fuel tank for the building next door to us. And it was right there in the alleyway, and but I think that was right in, like right where the breezeway is here. I think it was like somewhere right.
Yeah, that's
right
about
in
where I
here.
was thinking. Anytime you start digging, you weaken the whole.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wondered if we were just looking at the beginning of the damage, or if we were looking at a midpoint of the damage, or where you are looking at today on that building sinking. I don't know how long it's been down and how far it's moved in the last whenever.
Yeah, and you know, we actually looked at the rest of the building, and basically the northeast corner has just went like that. And but the rest of the building, you know, shows typical, you know, hairline
right.
cracks that you get in all those older buildings. But that one there, it's pretty, and again, you know, without measuring over time, I don't know if it's still moving or if it's found its place, or.
That's what I was referring to, and I worry about when you get started and all of a sudden you think, oh, we gotta correct this.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, we're trying to, you know, as far as the siding goes, Bob, I don't think it would change anything as far as us wanting to put that siding on. It would be more of asking permission if we can remove those walls to versus the cost of trying to jack that end of the building back up. And even and what concerns us as well is with the micropiles and all that, that's a best guess scenario for, you know, until they get down there and they get into the soils, you know, they don't know how deep they have to go to find solid materials or anything like that, and so you can really run into unknown things there that can really change things for you fast.
So I'm confused. Along with Bob, I wonder about the order of things. Are you going to do some sort of an engineering study or something to find out why the corner of that building is dropping down? Because if it continues to do that, if you have hardy plank siding, when that shifts, it's gonna break.
Right, and to be honest with you, coming back to you guys is very probable as far as removing that. I guess what we're trying to do internally is say, okay, is there enough square footage there that's of value to us to put $50,000 into
Amen.
jacking it up and putting it back, or requesting us to be able to take it off? And so
what convinces you that it's just that corner that's going to sink?
Well, we had, like I said, we had the engineers come out,
Okay.
basically the people who do
Okay.
actually do the work, and we evaluated all the buildings, and we found a few more hairline, but they were typical, and nothing that concerned them, and so when you look at the building, the foundations, when you go inside that little room where that corner is, where Josh and I went into today, you can actually see there's a set of steps that goes into another doorway that used to be there that they
Yeah.
blocked in,
Okay.
but that foundation is so different right there underneath that piece versus underneath these two walls, and we didn't see any movement in that area.
I evidently didn't put all those pieces together when you were explaining it.
That's okay.
There's also a downspout there at that northeast corner.
Yeah.
That just drains up against the side of the building.
Yeah, and
Could be part of it.
how long it's been doing that could be part of it as well, cause there's that little, retaining wall that separates the parking lot there as well too, but I looked on that, that little retaining wall thinking everything was so close to see if it had cracked or moved, and I couldn't, nothing jumped out, so.
Okay, any more testimony from, or questions of the proponent? All right, well, thanks.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Anybody here to speak in opposition to this application? All right, anybody to speak in other testimony about this application? All right, I guess we'll close the public testimony portion of the hearing and discuss things. I knew I had to use that for something. I guess I have some concerns. It seemed like staff had to go through some gyrations to kind of try and make hardy plank fit into our design guidelines. And it doesn't really fit into our design guidelines. The reason it isn't in our design guidelines is something like vinyl siding is because it hadn't been invented yet when our design guidelines were adopted, and my guess is that it would have been mentioned alongside of vinyl siding in the design guidelines to be avoided wherever possible within the historic district. So, I have problems with that, and I have problems with, so the first guideline is for building renovations, original materials should be restored wherever possible, so that seems to really indicate that both the siding, the stucco, I appreciate the idea that wanting to make it kind of look like a new building and like it all kind of fits and blends together, but it is really an old building. I guess I can imagine that some people have a personal preference to want it all look brand new and shiny, but it is an old building and it's got scars, and part of the scars are part of the story of the building, the different repairs over time. And I'm not saying that we can't fix it and make it look better, but that's part of the character of the building. So I think we're maybe thinking about over-restoring it. And I'm a little concerned that we haven't even looked at the cost of doing the stucco repairs and gone right to the hardy side. And I have the same concerns with the steel windows, because the steel windows are really character defining for the building. The fenestration of them, the look of the steel buildings, the glazing of the steel windows, the glazing of the steel windows is really indicative of the time and the period that this building was made. And if we just remove them and replace them with vinyl, which is something that definitely is not recommended, then we're kind of losing our way as a landmarks commission. We can bend the rules some to kind of fit things, but at some point we bend them so much that we break the guidelines, and I think that's the problem here. Yeah.
Bring up one note. So the last time that Mr. Austin came through, it did get approved on the interior for vinyl windows. But I think Josh did include that, or in detail that in the staff report.
Wasn't that building A?
That was for the back
Was it
building.
building B?
No, I think
Oh,
it's
building A,
Building A
excuse me.
was
in the
approved for
breezeway
final
area.
In the
investment.
breezeway, yeah, the back area that's not as visible, so just want to point that out.
Well, Eric, I've spent too much time really driving by that building, haven't got out there with a tack hammer and sounded. But I kinda agree with the owner that you would almost have to remove a lot of the different gunite in different places out there to get more onto it. And then it's really gonna change these windows inset because you're gonna have great movie wall out. I think we're lucky to have a man that wants to put this much effort into really an old building that is a toss-up, how much real more life it had. As is. It's not saying that a new building couldn't be constructed there and be very profitable. But putting a lot of money into an old building and hoping it turns out to be profitable is a little more gambler than I am. I'm sure that, we're not interested in anything other than the outside walls, but I'm sure that he's got a can of worms on the inside as far as electrical and plumbing and everything else, so, we're interested in something that is only a minor part of what a building is. A building has a lot more than just the exterior walls.
Eric, do I hear you saying maybe that just because there's cracks and different textures on the stucco and the material, that it might be better to just patch and repair what you could and keep the visual aspect more similar to what it originally was, and that wouldn't necessarily mean taking it down to whatever bare material and making it all look similar? Do I hear you saying that maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think repair is probably, repair rather than replace the stucco seems to be a viable option to me. I mean, I don't, really know and have the numbers and do the calculations, but it seems like that's a viable option. And, I mean, if this was another I mean, I don't know. It just seems like slapping vinyl, the equivalent of slapping vinyl up on a historic house. And that's why we have the design guidelines, is because we want to discourage that kind of thing. It might be the quick fix, it might be the easy fix, but it's not the right fix. And I guess that's my point. And that we have these guidelines for a reason, and we do bend them at times and stuff. That's just my thing.
Eric, what do you do when you have an area that has no stucco, it's just plain cement block wall? And never been stucco, leave it? That was historically destroyed many years back, whatever was there.
Exactly, I mean, some of that's up to the owner, right, whether they wanna just paint over it or stucco it or, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's always the thing that we try and balance, right, the cost and the viability versus the historic appropriateness.
Well, the fact that this building is not out on the curb, I think could, make a difference. To have a usable building back there and one that, is not unattractive, is plus. And, if the building were the one in front, I would be with you 100% in terms of, restoring the stucco. That, I'm not sure that we need to do that with a storage building behind the primary property.
May I ask staff a question? I think I read it here, but I can't find it right now when I want. But this is really a building that has been judged in non-compliance? How did they describe that historically?
So I just actually asked Josh, you read my mind, Bob, I pulled the historic inventory sheet on it, basically as a short mention of what that is. A majority of the description that is involved usually does deal with the primary structure, and that's what our historic district and the inventory sheets actually call out, is it really concentrates on that front building, not necessarily the back building. And part of that is probably because it was an addition and that it wasn't what was, when the inventory sheets were done, as that was the attention grabber or the historic portion. It still obviously is listed, so it is, that's why it's before you,
So
yeah.
non-contributing, is that the?
Yeah, that's the word.
Oh, in terms
Oh,
of yes.
the property itself is, because it's property as a whole that it has a significance, and it is eligible contributing. But as Don was just mentioning, and I brought up in the beginning, there is one sentence that describes this building. It says a second one-story building is located on the property. That's it. So there's, granted, I don't know if Scott's been able to find any pictures. The inventory sheet has a picture of the front building, so there wasn't a lot to go off of as to what the building was.
Well, I was thinking about, the house on where Third Place comes around, where we approved a garage, but it was very visible it is very visible from the street, and so we required that it match the house but this one is just kind of hiding behind another building.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, I know we'll probably face this in the future with infills and stuff like that, but I think the argument for hardy board and all of that is more appropriate for infills versus restoration. It's, you know, all our guidelines are really not to add another layer and restore what's original and do all of that stuff. It really doesn't do it. And I think it's kind of a stretch to compare how many wood-sided buildings there are within the district and say, well, there's wood-sided buildings within the district, so it's okay to put wood-siding on this building that's always been stuck. I think that's a stretch. And I think it's a stretch to equate hardy board with wood as well, because one's a man-made material and the other isn't. They might be similar in appearance, but they're two completely different products.
In a sense, yes, and then you could also take a look at hardy board is made of cement, which is very similar to the material that is on this type of building.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna stumble into something here, and then if it votes down, we'll start over again, but I'm gonna recommend that we approve application 174-20 with the conditions, but maybe we're gonna have to add a condition to make everybody happy, in the sense that the conditions that are there were fine, if I can find them again in my favor, but we're gonna have to give our owner a little bit of an option and a request that he come back to us. There's what we're looking for. I don't know how you get Mother Monday on your side, but if he does run into a major problem, stabilizing the building, that he would come back to us at that point. I am with you, Eric. Wood windows are wonderful, but this is not a contributing building, so I think with the approval of the vinyl windows will work out. Anyhow, how we put that all together, I don't know, but I'm making a motion that we approve it as submitted.
Could you speak a little bit to how you would feel about just repairing and painting versus the?
I think we'll have to reopen the meeting, which is fine. So, could we ask you that question then?
Sure.
Thanks.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, Eric has a point, about adding something that makes it pretty modern. Not that it wouldn't look good to do it, and not that it wouldn't match some of those other buildings, but he certainly has a point about keeping it more the way it was originally. But I've been down there and I can't remember, I know there's a different textures on the surface, but if it's painted all the same color, part of that discrepancy is gonna go away. Not all of it certainly, but and I don't know how much thought you gave to that, or whether you just wanted to cover that crap up and be done with it.
Well, there was,
How are you
you know,
feeling
there's,
about that?
you know, I guess the main reason that we were going towards the hardy plank siding was that there was so much variation in the textures of it all the way around, from nothing to really, really, really heavy to almost nothing again, all the way around the building. And so part of what we thought with the hardy plank siding was that, once again, it did kind of match up with some of the materials that are in that area, and two, it made the building consistent. And so, I suppose it's not that you couldn't do it, we were trying to give it the best lift we could, I guess.
I guess I have a question too about the proposed windows. So would you keep the fenestration pattern of the originals, like the ones out
Yeah,
on
yeah, we would
the-
put the grids in them.
And with the same
which is
pattern?
what we did on the back windows, and I apologize for not showing that on the renderings, but on the back windows of building A, we put grids in those windows, and they actually look pretty good.
And they're the through grids, right, with the separate panes rather than like the grids that are inside a double.
The ones on the front building, they're actually internal grids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so what we did to match them, on the vinyl windows is we did black vinyl outside, and it's kind of an off-white vinyl on the inside. So the windows are two-tone because the original wood sash window that we rebuilt on the side of building A was originally black, and we were doing all black, so we tried to keep everything uniform as far as colors go. Yeah, and so you can see here too, right here on this one, see this here was originally, originally there was a big fuel tank inside here.
Oh.
And so what they did is they set the fuel tank, and then they built the building around it. And so the only way they could get that fuel tank out way back when was knock that whole wall out. And so then again, they just CMU'd it back up, put a finish on it, threw a vinyl window in there, and called it good. Yeah, right in there. So that whole thing, originally I thought it was a doorway, and in my research it was, nope, we had to take a big fuel tank out, and that was the only way we could get it out, so they just cut a big old hole. Drug the fuel tank out.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm presuming my proposal died for lack of a second, that's what I'm asking now.
Well, I was just wondering whether anybody
Oh.
else had any further questions from the proponent. Okay, thanks again.
You
Guess
bet.
we'll close the hearing again.
I'm really torn on this. Which way to go? If it was doctored up a bit and painted, it's gonna look a lot better than it does now. And it'd probably be less expensive unless you had to strip it. So, I don't know, I'm not sure which way to jump on this.
I'm the same as you. Like, I can see where being more modernized and things would make it much more attractive and easier to use in the future. But going off of our guidelines, it doesn't really meet it with that siding or the windows, so. Just my 2 cents.
Well, I wonder if we could just, I don't know, ask him to reconsider and get some estimates and maybe think about things and then come back again. It sounds like the building's gonna be a little bit of a process anyway, cause he's gotta figure out what to do with that corner, so. you'd be coming back to us again anyway.
I would like to defer a decision also, and I think that, if you had, if you got an estimate, a realistic estimate on, not using the hardy plank, but doing the walls, whether you re-stuccoed or whether you just painted or, just, revisit that option.
Could I speak again? I don't have to.
Yeah,
So the options that you have, it sounds like you may wanna look to continue so you have a couple options. You can keep the record open and extend it to, your next Historic Landmark Commission meeting or one before. Do it just, I think we have to do 10 days, keep the record open for at least 10 days, so, you can do that. You can approve it with different conditions, you can deny it, so you just have a couple different options. It sounds like kind of have a little bit of a mixed bag, and I believe Bob did make a motion and it did die without a second, so.
so maybe just a motion to continue, to not come to a decision and continue it on to the future.
I make a motion to continue this, commission application 174-20 till our next meeting.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
Well, I think one thing it'll give us a chance to look at that some more. I mean, I've been around it, but it's been a little bit of time. It might give you time there's different kind of paints that have texture in them, and if there was like the concrete block, that really heavy textured paint might come close enough to matching the other I can see you not wanting to strip it, and if you could look at different ways of doing it so it doesn't cost you a huge amount of money, and come back with some ideas on that to us, I would appreciate that.
And I think that all of us can go back and walk around and look at the building with different eyes than we did the last time, based on this conversation and discussion.
Yeah, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll see you again.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And please don't consider this a waste of time. I think it's been a valuable discussion.
Yeah. And we're really, you've done fabulous work on it.
Yes.
No, and I appreciate all the help and the consideration from you guys. It's been quite a journey, and we just wanna keep it going, and there's a lot of buildings that need help out there.
There are a lot.
It's an understatement. Wow.
Hopefully you're not laying it and causing you a problem.
No? When's the next session, John?
March 25th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next is Historic Landmarks Commission application 175-20. From Elizabeth Wallace, the request to approve, to replace failing gutters at the Anderson House. It says granary on the agenda, but it's actually a house with wooden gutters to replicate the originals. And should I read the
So I
rules again?
did notice that we did not have anyone else enter the room, so I think we're good on the, so you'll just do the ex parte and see if anybody wants to challenge any of your.
Well, that's what I'm gonna ask, just so the record is straight. Are we going to challenge you as being?
Well, I was going so I was going to state that I actually filled out the application.
No,
and
you're
did some of the research, and we'll do some of the work, so I was going to probably have to step aside.
So you'd like to go ahead and step back. You are welcome to stay and here, just obviously, not be involved in any of the discussion and or, the decision making or voting.
He'll be welcome in the discussion, the only place he won't be welcome is at vote time, is that correct?
Well, to an extent, so, I mean, we kinda have, if he's going to be answering questions, then maybe we should have him go ahead and join the audience and so we have a real definite line. And I maybe have a feeling Eric may be involved in some of the discussion, unless Elizabeth's gonna run it all, she
I'll be
might.
happy to.
Okay, so it's up to Eric, you know.
Maybe I'll go sit.
Okay, all right, so
And
you
then,
go ahead and you'll step out, just.
And the same thing's gonna happen at the next.
Okay, so, and this isn't pertaining to you being involved, not only
With
filling
the
the application,
museum.
but with the museum commission?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Bob, you get the gavel.
Okay, well, we got, I think, all our preliminary work done, all I can do now is call for the staff report.
Staff report,
And I
yes.
think he even left, what was it, clear house time or?
Yeah, it's after 5.
I thought
So
the
they're gonna see
legal
how
staff
fast I
was
can
here.
go.
Wasn't that the legal staff, Don? Wasn't this the legal staff issue?
That was, yes, I was actually going to introduce you, but,
Oh, they really cleaned house for her.
Yes, so that Diana McDougal is going to be our counsel, provided, and I can give you a little brief, well, not introduction, but I'll explanation later. So as you stated, this is for HLC 175-20. Application is for the Fort Dalles Museum applying to remove the existing galvanized steel gutters and replace them with new wooden gutters to the, am I doing the right one? I am. To the Anderson Homestead building. I do apologize that I did put granary on the application. I was over Paula's shoulder and I was reading from our historic inventory sheets, and unfortunately our inventory sheets are pretty limited in terms of information, and that's what it actually calls out on the inventory sheet, even though it has a picture of the homestead house. That was kind of odd. So a little bit of confusion there. We did have Eric as well as Dennis, former Commissioner Davis, reached out to us, so it is actually for the Anderson Homestead building. Property's at 500 West 16th Street, and I apologize, I've got some old photos here. This is the actual property, and this is an old photo, and I'm kind of bummed that I pulled the property file, and I forgot to include that, which includes the beautiful retaining wall that was installed back in 2018. That was, I think our Public Works Department had assisted with the installation of that retaining wall, which you're familiar with. Absolutely gorgeous. Notice was published in the local newspaper, as well as notification to property owners within 100 feet, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office. As of the date of writing the staff report, we did not receive any comments. Staff is recommending approval with conditions based upon findings of fact. I'm not going to go ahead and go through, except for 2013 was when the galvanized steel gutters were actually placed on the building with the anticipation of trying to divert water away from the foundation. So you guys had some great photos. You guys did good. So obviously. Anyway, so I just went ahead and blew these all up and put them on a slideshow. Phenomenal photos. I love this. I would assume this was the inventory photos that were done in black and white before the move. The intent is to utilize the existing gutter, wood gutter systems, as well as recreating the new gutters and then building new wood gutters to go on the building. You can actually see some of the damage that's occurred on the foundation. They have done quite a bit of work to the building, as well as here. And then you can see where it actually butts, and it's actually eating away at the wood. So definitely needed for restoration, or continued use of the building, as well as preservation. Staff is recommending approval with 6 conditions of approval stated. Do you have any questions of staff?
You're done?
I'm going fast, yes.
Yeah, you're fast.
It was an
Well-
excellent application. That made it easy for me.
Anyone on the commission have something to ask staff at this point, or do we wanna call the proponent up at this point? You got any questions for staff?
No, it's appropriate thing to do.
Now,
so.
Elizabeth, are you going to come identify yourself, please?
Absolutely, Bob. My name is Elizabeth Wallace. I live at 5910 Chenoweth Road, out in the country a little bit. And I'm the president of the Fort Dallas Museum and Anderson Homestead Commission. And Eric is our vice president, which is why he's out here. So we have been working on our grounds and our buildings quite diligently, and the steel gutters were necessary at the time to slow the damage. Now we are in an opportunity where we have the funds and the resources to address it in a more historically appropriate way. My understanding, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that the V structure of the gutters was just basically two boards that were butted together, which is of course easier to construct than carving something out in a curve. So that's why that hanger, and we have a number of the original hangers on property, is that?
Yeah, we have 7 of the original 8 ones.
Right. So to use the original gutter hanging mechanism and then recreate the ones that were missing in an identical style and put those gutters back up so that we can protect the building as well as keep it looking more appropriate. The steel is not necessary at the time, but we would like to have it look more authentic. So that's what we're working with. The original gutters on the Anderson homestead did run into a cistern that Mrs. Anderson used for the cooking and the washing up. A cistern isn't really the best idea now. There are fall hazards. They attract creatures and bugs, and so the cistern part of the original gutter structure is not going to go back in. So this would be the gutters going to downspouts.
I think,
Am I incorrect?
so this is.
Come in and identify yourself,
Eric Gleason, 704 Case Street, Dallas. So this is the earliest picture that we have of the house, so 1895, just about when it was completed, before the porch was put over the front. So you can see the gutter system here. There's 4 brackets on the front. It tilts over to the what would now be the east side of the house, and just kind of extends well beyond the house and then drains down. And our thought is that we're gonna give that a try and see how much splashback we get on the house, as opposed to putting it in a downspout.
My error, thank you.
Yeah.
I only have one question.
Pardon, go ahead.
I mean, okay, I just wanted to make sure we're at the question part. In figure 8, with the steel gutters, it's showing significant water damage against the building. Would that still be the case if it's replaced with a wooden gutter? Let's see, that one, yeah.
No, well, so we do actually have a bid out for a contractor to help repair all of that wood that has been damaged, and to add a preservative to the building.
Okay.
So, these things are sort of all happening in conjunction. But I don't see why with the gutters going in that this situation would reoccur.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if it was gonna be a sloped gutter or like you said, preservative, or what would be there to kind of help not continue with this problem.
Right. So, taking these steel gutters down, addressing that area of rot, right? And then I assume that they're going in at a slope. I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah. So this is a special case here. This is the gutter that's actually, if you go back to a contemporary picture of that.
I'm trying to figure out where that little picture is.
It's this one here.
Ah!
So at some point this house was moved to the lot in 1971, and then opened up as a museum in the 1980s. I think it took a lot of restoration work to get that done. At some point had been a gutter placed here because there are stairs coming up and splashback was occurring on the walls here. And at some point, I don't know, an ice falling down or something tilted the gutter so that it was actually draining into the house instead of away from the house. And that's what led to that kind of area of rot there. So we're gonna try and address that and put a sturdier gutter system in there.
I have a question. I had never thought about wooden gutters until this came up. I would assume that a certain amount of your rain will absorb into the wood rather than run off like it does with the metal.
That's my understanding from having worked with wood. I also think that as you stack two pieces together in a V, as they get wet, they're going to swell and actually make that a tighter seal.
Yeah.
So that would be my expectation, from what the process would be.
So that wood isn't sealed then?
I don't think it was originally, so we don't,
Guess you can plan on replacing it every 15 years.
yeah, we don't know.
We only left that.
Yeah.
Where my memory gone south on me, we had some examples of wooden gutter at the museum that were carved out of one piece of wood.
We still
Right,
do.
at the surgeon's quarters, right over the walkway into the thing, there's one section of a wood gutter.
Mhm.
And that's not replicated anymore. You can't go to the hardware store and find a piece.
I don't know, I haven't really looked.
So, you saying the ones on the original Anderson house were just two flat boards nailed together?
That's what it looks like from the photos, yeah.
I'm glad you put the galvanized that you at least made an effort. Illegally or otherwise to control the water, because those wooden boards are gonna shrink terrible.
Yeah, and there might be a way to actually, we might put a metal liner within the wood gutter. And it won't be visible from the outside.
But you can see why just doing two straight planks and putting them together in a V is something that a farmer would do, right? Because it's simple and they have the lumber available. If they have to redo it every 15 years, and so be it, right?
Well, that doesn't even really picture that, look like your, holders, cause there's no real distinct cut, that's more of a.
Yeah, and
It has a V in it.
Yeah, there, well, it's got a V in it, well,
So right
maybe,
here.
okay.
yeah.
It's got a little flat spot on
And
it.
some of them have more of a distinct V than others.
Oh, okay. I was just looking at that one, and it looked a little rounded in the bottom.
Yeah.
That might have been the jig that he used to cut them with.
That was the last one cut, right?
Oh, I didn't realize you were talking about slapping too. Okay, fine. You're real.
So.
Any further questions, go ahead.
So it looks, or it sounds like you're going to have to do a little experimentation with how it's actually going to work.
With the
Yeah.
correct configuration and installation, absolutely. We do have a contractor that specializes in such things that, we have the money approved to spend. So we hope to approach it in the most authentic way possible.
Cool.
And he looked at it and looked, the cut spikes that held them in place are still in the bracket, so he's thinking we're gonna be able to line up each bracket with its original location and.
Dawn,
Impressive.
would you go back to that picture of the faithful picture of the north face of the building? There.
This guy?
Almost at the north face. Yeah, that's close enough, I think, well, that's north.
Well, this is the one that's facing north without the porch, so this is the original, or we could go to this one.
Yeah, there we go, that's good enough. So you're going to have to, which was not in the original picture, you're gonna have to cross at least one surface of that, or else people get grounded going up the steps. And that's the one that's creating your most damage right now, is that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But maybe you won't put wooden E-trons all the way around that then?
Part of the reason that gutter has caused the damage that it has is because it did take a significant amount of ice, and it bent out of shape, right? So it's tilting towards the home instead of away from it. So I agree with you, Bob. We're gonna have to figure out what the appropriate way to catch that water is. We don't wanna create a mud puddle at the bottom of the stairs. We don't wanna get people wet. But it is original that the gutters just sort of dumped water off the edge. we have to find a balance there and see what's most appropriate for the property. Did that answer your question?
Yes, in a sense. It sounds like to me it's a committee project in action, or a committee meeting in action, or something of that nature. We'll just make do with what we got.
You're bringing up a lot of good points that I don't know that we thoroughly.
Yeah, I think there is talk, although we're kind of waiting for the contractor to come out and kind of really look. We spent a lot of time scratching our heads trying to figure out just why it was so wet there, even though now the gutter tilts the correct way and everything else. We still get a significant amount of moisture there. And we don't know, what happened was the metal gutter bent down. So it's not draining very well now. It's actually spilling water out of this area too. So that's probably partially contributing to that. But then you can see there's a lot of splash up here from.
Well, that was irrigation water on that. That lower board was irrigation water.
This one here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was when the sprinklers were out of filter at that time. And I also think some of the wetness of the building on that north face was caused from inadequate sprinkling or over-adequate sprinkling. You call it what you want. Before we realigned them.
Yeah.
But the eave trough up there, it's gotta be there. At least the one over the stairs.
Absolutely.
It isn't a large surface, it's got a very small roof surface, but it won't take much to discourage people from running up and down those steps. So, I was just wondering, because that was not in the original, this porch was, where does this porch fit in the original homestead?
So the porch is a period addition. So it wasn't there in 1895, but I don't know exactly when it got added, but it was definitely there in 1971 when they stripped it off before they moved it, so.
Well, one thing.
And I believe that the boards under here, there's still a couple of remnants of those boards, and I think they're held by machine cut nails, if I remember correctly, so probably turn of the century. Probably not too long after it was built, that purchase.
One thing you have in your favor, at least most years, is a limited amount of rain. Well, hey, I'm from
No.
Eugene. Yeah.
Alright, any further questions of the proponent?
No.
Is there anyone here that would, but you can sit down, I will give you a break. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in opposition to this improvement to the museum and the Anderson House? And if there's no one here that wants to speak up, you get another chance to say anything, but I don't know what you'd wanna add.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut for a change.
Alright, we're closing the public hearing at the wrap of the gavel, and we're entertaining any kind of, discussion you wanna make, and we'll be looking for a motion to approve or disapprove or modify or whatever.
I think.
Cocktail hour's getting close, so let's move.
Oh.
I make a motion to approve Historical Landmarks Commission application 175-20.
I second the motion.
And I vote yes.
No. You're a little ahead of me, but, we'll accept that.
And that would
All in
be-
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This application has been approved.
And that was-
Did you wanna add a little trinket there, my young lady?
Just wanted to make a
On conditions of approval?
Yeah, just wanna make sure that does include the 6 conditions of approval, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
You gotta put, oh, you didn't make the motion, you made the motion.
Yeah, I made the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got the conditions of approval.
Yeah.
Good, I don't hear that, okay. Alright,
Hang
now,
on,
Wait,
Jean,
Bob,
look at the boss.
do I say then that Eric abstained?
Eric abstained, yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
shall we go on to the next application?
Please do.
Well, nobody's saying no,
Proceed,
so I'm
go
gonna
on.
say yes.
Hold on.
Okay, this is application 176-20, and it's presented by the Historic Landmark, it's presented by the same group, Elizabeth Wallace, and it's for another addition at the museum, and I'll call for staff to make their report, and then we'll know what I'm trying to talk about.
Perfect, thank you. This application, as you stated, is for approval to replace corrugated metal siding on the eastern wall of the vehicle display building with wooden siding. Applicant is Elizabeth. She is also here to answer questions. And Eric is also abstaining from this public hearing due to his relationship with the Museum Commission. Property is located at 500 West 15th Street. We did publish the advertisement in a local newspaper, property owners within 100 feet, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office. This is the date of the staff report. We did not receive any comments. Staff is recommending approval with conditions based upon findings of fact. And again, this is another application that came with some great photos. So this is the vicinity map that actually shows Fort Dalles, the surgeon quarters, and the vehicle building is this building here that we're discussing. I went ahead and just took a street view so you can kind of see what you were looking at from the street, but this one I love. It is a chronicle photo. Too bad we don't have the original one, but it gives you a little bit of history as to in 1953 when the American Legion, with the assistance of the local carpenters union, started the construction of the vehicle display building. So I went through, I did have a little bit of a more of a difficult time in terms of writing the staff report, partially due to the inventory sheet not really including much to be said about this building. It is part of the site, that is why it is before you today. However, it doesn't really call out that building, when it was designed, all the information that was provided in the application. In terms of the materials, I've had a couple conversations, and Bob and I had a couple conversations regarding, is that material, does it have a vested historic, is it historic because it's been on the building for over 50 years? So part of me says yes, it is, and then the other part says, let's make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and match the surgeon's quarters. So what I ended up doing is writing the staff report in support of the application, and I included the 4 conditions of approval. They will still have the other reveals of the building that will remain with that corrugated metal, which, as you all know, is a big part of the Dalles, Harvey Aluminum, Northwest Aluminum, that's called Northwest Aluminum, anyway, Martin Marietta. So we do have some of that history that's involved in our community for aluminum siding. However, it is in disrepair. The idea of that building was to store historic vehicles, and adding this additional siding on the side will actually help not only be aesthetic, but help preserve some of that building and the contents. So staff recommendation is approval with 4 conditions of approval. Do you have any questions of staff? So you can see some of the holes that are actually.
Before we open this for the opponent?
Well, so this wood siding would go all the way around the building?
So the plan is just to have this front building, so that is what is so this side of the building.
And that's the part that faces
that actually
surgeon
faces
quarters?
the surgeon's quarters, correct. So it would basically have the batten board similar to what we see here on the surgeon's quarters. Oops, wrong way. And then that would just be on that face of that building, not on the side. So this would remain metal, as would the back side, and then the opposite. That would just be this front facade that would be similar to that building in terms of style.
Is that the face that used to be open?
No.
No.
Oh, so
Different building.
that's a different building,
different
right.
building.
So that building, and I did not get a photo of it, that building is this one here, which actually has a lot of the carriages in it, and it is actually open, more like horse stalls is how I would describe it. So that building is
okay.
still open, and then this one is completely enclosed up here. So this is the building we're talking about right here. So it's no modification to this one right here.
If no further questions, I'd like to have the opponent step up to the mic and identify herself again so we know whose voice is on the tape, and tell us what you really want.
This is Elizabeth Wallace, 5910 Chenoweth Road, with the Fort Dalles and Anderson Homestead Commission. it's not pretty right now. And sometimes our guests and visitors arrive to the museum and they don't go see our antique vehicle collection because they think it's a storage shed. Cause it looks like a storage shed. That's my issue with it. The roof, the building never intended for the building to be with us as long as it has. We were all surprised to find that it would come before your committee because it has been here for 50 years. The hope was that we would have a more formal, larger, better quality building to store our antique vehicles in. We haven't quite put the funding together for that yet, so this is where our vehicles have been stored. We have done a fair amount of, we've made some attempts at increasing ventilation, increasing lighting. One of the biggest advantages for me of having this building refaced in wood is that it might not get quite as hot in there. We have no temperature control in this building, and it's very difficult for the antique vehicles. So the thought is just to, and it's volunteers. We're looking at $2,500 worth of lumber and a couple of sturdy volunteers who wanna knock it out this spring. To bring it more in keeping with the rest of the buildings on the grounds and just give it a little bit of a facelift until we can build our brand spanking new building. So yeah, and I believe the stain would be the same as the surgeon's quarters.
I think the idea is to keep the color of that the same.
Right. And the roof would still maintain its metal, and then as you said, the two ends, as well as the back side, would, still be the galvanized. So this end faces 15th. The very left-hand side backs into those wagon stables that you were talking about, if that makes sense. And then, my directions are all turned right. Yeah, so it's just this front face. I don't believe that we either budgeted or discussed anything to do with the windows, and so the windows would remain completely as is. So this would just be an aesthetic replacement of that galvanized on this one wall.
And a heat deterrent.
Hopefully, as anything that we can win in reducing the temperature in that building in the summer. Yes, Bob?
Well, I'm waiting for, anyone got questions to ask of our? I'm not anywhere involved today, but I was involved. And I think if you're going to do this, and you're looking to save that building for a couple more years anyhow, I think you ought to seriously consider the south end of that building.
This down here with the
This is
surface
the north
floor?
end. What
Okay.
you're looking at now with the garage door is the north end.
Okay.
The south end of that building needs some love also, and it is visible. It is visible when
It
people
is.
walk there. There is a 20-foot space between those two buildings, but, changing the thing to my eyeball won't change as long as the roof is there.
Bob, I'm with you, but there's only so much I can get Loyal to do between now and the end of March, right? I think the roof should be painted. I think that would be a fantastic next goal. But I think that getting the siding up at this juncture is a good place to start. And then if we can do the roof with the sprayer, I think anything that we can do. So by the south end, do you mean doing the board and the batten
Well,
around the
you've
south
got-
as well?
You've got that aluminum side buried under the dirt in case you've ever look at it, opportunity to look at it.
Look at
Yeah.
what?
Pardon?
Look at what? What are you talking about?
The south end of that buried building, it had dirt piled up against the aluminum siding.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Not
I
anymore,
haven't
sir.
walked out there.
Yeah, no, it has new gravel paths all the way around it, and a new gravel path from the surgeon's quarters down to it. We didn't want our guests, walking on slippery grass and hurting themselves, and so we're doing what we can to incorporate it into the museum grounds as much as possible. And so this, oh, good, there's my path, yep. And so this is just another step in that aesthetic process.
Well, it's the elevation, when you first come in, you can see the roof more than you can see the wall.
I agree with you, Bob.
The windows, are they wooden windows now?
Oh, yeah.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Any questions in proponent? Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Anyone that wants to testify in opposition to this? Hearing none, we're gonna close the public testimony and deliberate. Start deliberating.
Sounds like a good idea to do. It's too bad you can't do the roof, but I'm sure you're in a quandary of not wanting to invest any more money in it than you have to if you're gonna replace the building, so it's gonna be a compromise for you, I'm sure.
No, aesthetically, it's going to look much better. And I think you're right about the heat.
I'd make a motion to approve the Historic Landmarks Commission application 176-20 with the conditions of approval.
I second the motion.
Oh, good. Any further discussion? If no further discussion, I'll call for the question. I'll ask. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. You have been approved.
Thank you.
We got a little housekeeping to do. Eric, you can go back. You can take care of the housekeeping. Oh, good.
Just stay away.
Are you doing right?
I am. Okay, I guess the next thing on the agenda is resolutions. So we have 3 resolutions related to the public hearings. So, I entertain motions to approve the resolutions. And
No.
we should just do it for all of them, or?
No.
No.
We have to do them individually, and the first one we didn't approve.
Right,
Oh,
so
that's true.
right.
Yeah.
So we'll have to defer that.
I got
People
you up.
So these, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know what do we do on the resolution now,
Oh.
staff, on one
So
that
you'll
we
just-
didn't use.
You'll defer that, so you'll just defer
Defer.
that until the next public hearing, or when the public hearing.
we did that one
Yes.
already.
That was the one that we deferred.
Oh, do we actually have to make a motion to defer this resolution?
Nope, we'll
Oh,
just,
okay.
we'll just pull it at this
It's
time,
done,
yeah.
okay. So then we're on to the next resolution. I make a motion to approve resolution HLC 16-4-20 for HLC, I'm assuming application number 175-20, Elizabeth Wallace.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I make a motion to approve resolution HLC 16-5-20 for HLC 176-20, Elizabeth Wallace.
I second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Here's housekeeping done. You did good.
Thank you
See
guys.
what happens
Good job.
when you're really good?
I was like, I want some
Yeah.
practice, but then it's like, no one else is doing it. I'm the only one doing it.
You did well.
Yeah.
Excellent. The next item is staff commissioner comments.
So that'll bump us right into the next conversation, and Forrest is probably like, no. I do, we have not had an election of officers this year, so I did not put it on the agenda, so I'm thinking what I'll do on the March 25th meeting is have that as our first, as the first thing, we'll just do the election of officers before we start the public hearing. What has happened in the past is Bob ends up with the gavel when Eric isn't here. And, I mean, if there's maybe someone else that would want to potentially step up, either volunteer or be nominated, we can take a look at, making some changes. We don't have to make some changes, but we'll go ahead and do an election of officers at the next meeting.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because there were some issues with my reappointment to the commission. And as one of those conditions for my reappointment was that I would step down as the chair.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right, so then we will need some nominations and or / volunteers.
yeah.
Sandy, don't make eye contact, right?
Thank you.
Forrest is like, huh?
Can I nominate one of these other two?
So you guys have about a month to think about it, so
Be quick with
definitely.
your nomination.
Yeah. So, we'll add that to our next agenda.
If they're absent, are they
Now-
automatically
Oh, yes,
nominated?
and there's that old, if you're absent, remember you're going to be nominated.
Yeah.
And-
Oh, no.
Yeah, so, yeah, make sure you're there.
There's an incentive to be at the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and just, I mean, we do need, Eric, we need your education, we need your professional qualifications, and we do appreciate having you here, so, you've been an amazing chair for the entire time I've been here at the city, 25 plus years, I think. You've been the chair since the beginning, haven't you?
For a long time.
I think so, yeah.
I don't count it.
I know, right, I know, oh. Okay, so the other thing that I do have is the Walk Historic, the Dalles app. They are available on our iPhones as well as the Androids. I don't know if you haven't, have you any of you downloaded?
No.
Take a look at it. So, I have started a postcard and I will actually be getting those ready to get to the Main Street, tour boat. Bunny Huntington is her name. She'll be actually handing those out to people coming off the ships. I'm
The
actually
floozies too?
The floozies, I think they're gonna pass them out. I also wanna get a couple of them to the schools. There are a couple grade school classes that come down and do some of the tours or the walks of the murals that we currently have downtown. So I'm hoping to get those out within the next month and a half.
What's that app called again?
It is called Walk, and this is where I apologize, Historical the Dalles. So we probably should just done historic because you guys are Historic Landmarks Commission instead of Walk
Jim
Historical
Weeks would
Dalles.
have been appreciative of historical.
And well, and I have to tell myself I did the annual report, and probably for the 20 plus years that I've been doing the annual report, the first line in the annual report says the Dalles Historical Landmarks Commission, but the title says Historic Landmark Commission, which is what you are. And I caught it right as it was the third time I sent it to Isaiah, and I'm like, oh, how many years has it been that way? So, yeah. So I did correct that. And on that note, we will be having, or I'm going to be presenting the annual report to City Council on February 24th at 5:30. If you would like to attend, it's just a presentation. If you come and you would like
When's
to
that,
be
February
recognized.
24th?
February 24th at 5:30.
That's the next council meeting.
Next council meeting, yes. The mayor does not like, he likes to just get a couple of key points. What I'll probably end up talking about is our historic grants that we received, the plaster repair as well as the walking tour app. And then that goes right into the next one. Our CLG granting opportunity is available right now. I basically have about 2 weeks to get a grant in. Steve, the director, and I talked about, is there something that you'd be wanting to go for? Obviously, we could always do another workshop. I also thought there's the possibility of doing like phase 2 of our walking tour to add some more of the properties that we have downtown. Because we did have, 3 or 4 lists that we were going off of. So I don't know if you guys have any preference, suggestions, ideas.
So, do people still do design guidelines? Would it be time for us to update ours?
To redo them? We did look at them about 5 or 6 years ago, but yeah, it might be a good time to take a look at seeing if I can get a hold of Sally Donovan's niece. I know that she actually did receive all of her historic certification, and see if she'd be willing to take a look at and or maybe update.
Yeah.
Those usually are like guaranteed grants.
When it was done first, it was an intern that actually spent the summer interning at the planning office. And then
Was it Ann Seaton?
Yeah.
Oh, and
Ann
then she
Seaton.
did we don't have it up there anymore. She did the Shaker Village also. She
Yeah.
did thesis on that, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, so updates to our design guidelines. And what we could do too is possibly pull in some of the information that we've received from the State Historic Preservation Office in terms of when appropriate to, I don't wanna say deviate, but I guess if there's no other really word, deviate from what would be appropriate and when it would be, should be or could be applied by the commission versus when it should definitely not be. Okay?
Yeah, I think there's some real gray issues in here when we could just say, don't.
Not, right, well, and we, right, we
Would make
do
it
say
a lot easier.
shall,
Yeah.
or recommended. We
Yeah.
say recommended quite a bit rather than saying no.
Yeah.
And that's been difficult for staff to write a staff report sometimes. It's like, whoa, where am I going? Okay, so updates, do you want me to look into getting another workshop, or should we wait maybe a year?
Was our last one pretty well attended?
It was not, greatly attended. Part of it, I think, was, it was during hunting season, which is usually a big no-no. So a lot of people that could have attended or would have wanted to, including Doug, was off hunting with my father, so it's like, well, shoot. So, I mean, and that was pretty good, and then Alan and Bev Aggie went. I think Alan got sick, so he ended up not showing up, and Bev did come, but I wanna say about 5 to 8 people that we had at it, so it wasn't too bad.
And if we were gonna do another one, what topic would
I don't know, that's kind of what I was wondering.
We've done windows and plaster. Doors or something?
I mean, I can reach out to, I can take a look at, Lucian's coursework also and see
Yeah.
what he has offered. One other thing, and I did share this with you before, talking with Dan Spots up at the college, they're definitely wanting to, with their new skills center, which is obviously a year or so out, but taking a look at adding that historic component. I think we have a great ally in Dan Spots being with the college because he is such a preservation, I'm gonna say it nut, because he loves historic preservation. So,
I
obviously.
can't, really put this in my, we have been honored with brick chimneys in this town. And some of them are in the process of having to be restored. But where do you find somebody?
I think a masonry repair one would be
It
really
might be a good
That
one,
would be-
yeah.
And we're, one of the things I need to talk to you about is, the kitchen chimney at the surgeon's quarters is deteriorating, and we've talked to Michael Burney, who's the.
Byrne.
Byrne.
Oh, yeah.
Who's gonna come out and probably do that work for us. So, and he might be somebody that could teach a workshop as well, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Some
what
of
was
them
his
were
name?
quite artistic.
Michael Byrne.
Byrne?
B-Y-R-N-E, correct. Yes, he's related to the rest of the Byrne family, Pat Byrne. I think he's related to Pat Byrne. And Maggie worked at the library,
Mary
right?
was sister.
Yep. Okay, well, I can, I put that in here. Byrne. See if he would be interested and see if we can kinda get an idea price-wise and, Lucian did say that we didn't really have many people that were looking for that college credit. I think we had 1 or 2 that went ahead and paid to get those as college credits, but most people are just more handyman, they wanna learn how to do these, restoration projects. Okay, so I will work on that. Any interest in another phase of the walking tour? Should we maybe wait a year, kinda get people? Any thoughts on that, Sandy?
The physical walking tour brochure is, in a stall.
Okay. So I will say that I'm going to, which my mom always told me that, it's really flattering when you're copied, so I'm really kind of using your little postcard as like what I'm going to be doing the walking tour postcard, so. There's your compliment. It's flattering,
Yeah.
yes. So you did, those were great. I love that.
So it doesn't tell me when I'm looking at the Google Play Store, but can you guys see how many people have downloaded the app?
So the gal who did the platinum marketing, yes, she can, so I have not asked her for an update on that
Okay.
recently. So I think she has to be an administrator, so I don't know, I know that I'm not. I could be, but I don't know if I want that.
That's all right.
Have
I'd just be curious to
responsibilities.
see where we're at right now and.
So when is the next one?
Okay, so I'll ask about how many have downloaded, too. So I'll work on that, and then the last thing I've got here is, so we're in the budget process. Follow up with Wasco County regarding the vinyl windows. I did, reach out to, county regarding a couple other things, but they've been busy, so I'm gonna be having a meeting next week regarding some building codes, comments, and I might slip in the conversation with the administrator about fixing the vinyl windows that were supposed to be
Are they
replaced.
still using that building?
They are still using that building.
I didn't know where they fit in when they bought the old Queen Anne house up there, the old Plain Tree.
I'm not
Whether
sure.
they discarded using them.
I think they still use it
No,
for
I
storage.
think they just expanded.
Yep,
into
I
the
think
Plain
you're right.
Tree.
Some
I
more
thought
archiving.
Have you got a tour of that building since they moved into it?
I have not.
I'm gonna walk
You
up there
want
and
one?
ask them.
Demand.
Bob wants one. And then, Pioneer Cemetery, coming around, obviously spring we'll get the first cleanup. Coming up here probably with the way the weather's been looking, it may be a lot sooner than we'd anticipated. But, that's pretty much all I had.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You really uncovered a gem down there on the east end of town that's on that property where you diverted Dry Hollow Creek underground. Do you have a history of what that was prior to, on what you uncovered?
We have not, I've not been able to get someone to tell me, you may have not been at that meeting that we had the detailed discussion. So there was some conversations, and I did follow a post on the Dalles Happenings Facebook page, which sometimes they can go really awry, but this one was good to follow. And there was actually a gentleman that his grandparents lived in a house that was on top of that foundation that was actually there. And there were, we're talking like the 50s and 60s that were their memories where there was a house there. Right now, we just haven't, the city bought that property for our storm drain to be coming down, so we've got it protected. It is not landmarked, and I kind of talked to the public works director about landmarking it, and I kind of got the what? So, I think we need a little bit more information, and I had a feeling that it was associated or affiliated with the railroad, but it does not seem that I can't get any connection to the railroad, or to all of those houses, the railroad houses that are along Second Street, so, I'm not sure, I don't know if Eric, do you have any information on?
I don't, and I'm thinking, well, maybe we need to start with like a title search or something.
And dig back a little
Yeah.
bit, kind of get some more information, and we could probably
And then there's a
start
new
that
committee
process.
that all of a sudden jumped out at me today, the beautification committee, or whatever the title is.
Yes, so the mayor appointed, it's been about a year, I think they've been in action, and they gave out certificates for beautification awards, they do follow what happens in here, and then if there's a project where somebody does better a building and or property, they do provide them with a certificate, for beautification. I think they're planning to give those out annually, Paula, do you recall?
I believe so.
Okay. But I think they're having a meeting tonight, so they're always looking for volunteers. Bob's like, I want it.
And then this meeting, of course, is coming up tomorrow night. Isn't that what the one over at the historic St. Paul?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
St. Paul's. So, does anybody know who's been doing the work on the windows?
I didn't,
Oh, at St. Paul's, no, we don't.
I didn't know they were doing it there. I was just in there for a service not too many months ago,
It'd
like
be
Christmas.
nice to let the Chronicle know too, so they can get in there and take some photos of, it's a great write-ups of St. Peter's, when Doug did a bunch of work over there, I think that would be great to get some notification out in the public on seeing what they've done. And actually, I was and I think you know Nita Cecil is actually not working, well, she works part-time at the Chronicle now, she's taken a job elsewhere, so, I don't have that connection anymore, but, I would love to do an article about Scott Austin's, the old Don's Cleaners or the Weber's Cleaners, just because watching that, I mean, it's pretty
Has he gotten
amazing.
the beautification award?
He has not yet, but I have a feeling he probably is in the running this year,
Yeah.
so, or if he isn't, he should be.
Who does the nominations for this?
They have their group, and it's a vast group, I think represents quite a few of the community, I mean, last year they gave out a lot of them, and I was pretty excited to see all the people that received them, so. I can't remember, do you remember a number, Paula? I can't, yeah, no, okay.
Do you know whether the restoration they did on windows, are they doing them in place, or did they take them out?
For St. Paul's, that was the first I had heard of that, so
Oh.
I
Guess we'll find out
Cause
tomorrow.
There you
there are
go.
not many people doing it anymore, the guy that did ours is retired, and then he said, we've got a few more to do, and he said he would do them, and then I said, is there anybody else that does them, and he said, everybody's retired, Doug.
That's what I was wondering, who was doing the work
So
for
I
them.
would really be curious. It's one thing to patch them up a little bit in place, be another thing to take them out. I'll try to find that out tomorrow.
I do have
I'm
one.
really curious.
One exciting, the Old American Legion building, the couple that purchased it, I don't know if you've been in their shop, it's super cool. They are looking to do apartments on the second story, so they've submitted an application to turn those into residential units. And we'll be getting them through the process, and obviously taking a look at the vertical housing,
Basically, what would that detail for us, because they're not changing the outside.
nothing. Just
We-
support,
I mean,
just
the
a
landmark
thumbs up, right?
commission, we've already approved
The
building
windows,
on
right, when they
15.
did the tilt-in windows, when the Legion had them, so the only time it would be is if it was something similar, like what Scott Gare had done, where he put the railing on the upper, they have not mentioned any of that. So I think it's just going to be apartments, and it's gonna be dealing with utilities, and then the planning department for any modifications and building codes.
I have a question. I keep hearing about murals. So Main Street doing some mural blitz in town, and I was wondering if they're coordinating with you guys to try and, because I know at one point Landmarks had given direction that we prefer, not on primary and secondary
Right.
contributing buildings.
So, the mayor has been in contact with me, as has, Main Street, and Mayor Mace does plan to come in and talk to the Historic Landmark Commission. Without me saying too much, I think you've heard that the Wall Dogs, that we are actually anticipated to be hosting them in 2021, so next summer. I don't know if you are familiar with the Wall Dogs. It's pretty, you can go on YouTube, it's pretty amazing to see. Basically it's kind of like a festival in their own. And what has happened is, along with the art center, or the Dalles Art Center, they actually worked with Main Street and went out and took a look and inventoried all of the murals that we have, and basically classified them as to if they're salvageable, if they just need some minor repairs, if it's beyond repair. So they've done that with all the existing murals, because there are quite a few people that actually like them, which is great. And then these new murals that will be coming in, it can be an array of things, and that is what the mayor wants to come in and actually get a feel from you guys and see how involved you wanna be. I explained to him the parameters in terms of primary buildings. If it has not been painted on, it's brick, you better not, you just gotta stay away from it. And then, so I kinda gave him some of those lists, so he was grateful to get that information, but he also wants to get you all involved in, selection process, as well as if they do get a building owner that, let's say it's the old A.M. Williams building, what theme do you want on that mural? Do you want, the 20s, or do we wanna just follow one theme, or do we wanna hit sports? And to me, of course, I was throwing my opinions, imagine that. I'm like, if somebody's living, they shouldn't be on a mural, so, I guess, maybe that's just my personal opinion, but I kind of liked the period of significance that we have in our two historic districts, and I think that it would be really vital for them to showcase what our downtown truly is, and we do have quite a hodgepodge of buildings and periods of time, but our period of significance is late 1800s, early 1900s, and I think that if they miss that, then they'll be missing quite a bit. So that was my input, but they do want your input. I think, would be asking, hoping he's gonna come in the March meeting to sit down and kind of go over what they're looking at, and they've been trying to talk to some building owners to see who's interested or could be interested. He does have my list of primary, secondary, etc. And he knows if it's brick and it's not painted and it's primary, we'll walk away. So we're good, but it looks pretty exciting. Granted, I'm an art teacher's kid, so anything that deals with art and painting, and I'm not a mural fan by any means, but these kind of murals are exactly what I think that the Dalles, it's kind of like that small business revolution. It's some cool thing that brings a little bit of history and interest to the younger populations, which is one of your guys' goals. So I'll get off my soapbox. Yes.
Where do we stand at this point on our first antique sign, or what are they, decorative sign or artistic sign? When is the first one going up?
I don't, so I did the annual report to city council, and as I was typing it, I'm thinking, I wonder when these are going up. So I've not heard, actually, and I probably need to shoot off an email and ask them when they're anticipating to install these neon signs, just so we can kind of watch what the installation looks like. As well, we have to sign off on a permit anyway, and they have not submitted to us for a building permit yet.
Well, that's what I wondered. We asked, I think I did anyhow, and I kind of thought we did, that we wanted to see one go up before they come back with the next request. And I haven't seen one go up yet.
Right. And I think that they had some rumblings of doing something similar to, having these murals. Obviously, any mural that goes on a building that is in the historic districts would have to come before you. So the painted ones that I was talking about earlier. But they did say that they would be identifying these buildings to potentially put more of the neon signs up. But there's a lot of stuff going on. So I think that with the Wall Dogs project, it might be something that may concentrate on that for a little while. I'm not sure. It'd be nice to get, maybe I'll have Dawn Warren come in and give like an update as to what they're doing and what they're working on right now.
I have a question. When are they gonna take the Christmas lights off the light poles?
I don't think was they ever intended to come down? They wasn't Christmas oriented, was it?
No, I figured that they said something about Valentine's Day when they initially did that. But I had a thought, during the holiday season, that they need to have either all right-handed people put them up, or all left-handed people put them up. And,
well, that's kind of part of the charm.
So the
well, you and I don't, as lefties, don't have time to put.
Well, yeah, the OCD in me, I completely understand. And then also you have the ones that I don't think people that are challenged with colors should be hitting the buttons, because some that are meant to be red are a little more orange versus it's like they needed to hit one more time. They have the buttons. Anyway, they like little remotes. Anyway.
And the very fact that they're not coiled evenly just
makes you twitch.
It's like some people who should be forbidden to have Christmas.
Those aren't easy to put up, though. You haven't tried that.
No, I just done well. They would be very pretty. I was surprised at how nice some of them looked, but
I know there was a rush to get some of them up, and they were, of course, they had money coming in and they were buying them as they were getting money, so some, blocks were probably done by one group, and then maybe another block was done by somebody who could volunteer a couple extra hours one night. They kind of went a little bit ahead, got the cart before the horse, and, you know, had put out on Facebook that they're gonna be doing all of this prior to checking with the city, because the city pays for the power on the lights and for the, anyway, and we control the downtown. There's the historic component of downtown, and I'm a very big white light kind of gal, so the colors kind of make me twitch a little bit, but I'm getting used to them. So what we did is we basically told them, yes, go ahead and put them up. We will take a look at it and see how well they're received, or if there are any issues or concerns. They did say that they would be willing to pay for the additional power that it would be costing. They're low energy, so taking a look at it, and I've been kind of watching the Facebook posts, and it seems like their favorite people. I have not seen anybody. I mean, I've seen a couple comments like you that I've thought in my head and thought, okay, it's you, just stop. But yeah, I mean, anyway, so they do intend to keep it on throughout the year if that's what the city would allow. So right now it's just kind of like a trial period. Obviously March is coming around, they'll drop it to green. It's red right now. When they did the Small Business Revolution, the night for the announcement, they went and they got everything to orange, which is the color of small business, which unfortunately we didn't win. But anyway, I mean, it does add a little bit of festivity. They are also working on doing quite a few events downtown, and the gal that I mentioned earlier, Lindsay Jemay, she's been a real force from the Dell's Workshop to get, I mean, just the energy. They've got quite a few people just pretty excited and trying to get downtown vibrant, and I don't know, it's pretty exciting to see, so.
Cause when you asked me about them up, I asked, well, when was their life expectancy, and you said there'd be no problem when everybody wanted them, they could take them down, or didn't want them anymore.
Right. That was the direction that we went in. Matthew Klebs, who used to work, he and I worked with them and talked with them about if they're not well received, then, you know, we'll probably have you take them down and just do it period during Christmas. So it seemed to be pretty welcome so far. And if it lightens up downtown a little bit, I need to just let it go. Let it go.
I'm gonna make a
Let
motion
it
to
go.
adjourn.
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you guys for a long meeting.
Yeah.
Start thinking about your nominations or volunteering.